SLT එක්ක ස්පීඩ් අප් වෙන්න. සුපර් ඩීල්ස් අත්විඳින්න. SLT ස්පීඩ් අප් සුපර් ඩීල්ස් සැප්තැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි.
In your headlines tonight, end game. UNP's struggle to nominate a presidential candidate looks to be nearing a crescendo. Plummeting numbers. International Monetary Fund lowers Sri Lanka's growth forecast, says agreed fiscal targets out of reach, but insists reform program is still on the table. Double trouble. Adverse weather hits thousands, with over 20,000 people evacuated.
We advise people living in landslide-prone areas to be extra vigilant about unstable cuts in vicinity to their houses.
Trump in trouble. US President faces a formal impeachment inquiry. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday, the 25th of September 2019.
නව ලයිෆ් බොයි කූල් ෆ්‍රෙෂ් සහ ලෙමන් ෆ්‍රෙෂ් මෙන්තෝල් සහ ලෙමන් සාරයෙන් දහදිය ගඳ ඇති කරන සැඟවුණු විස බීජ වලින් ආරක්ෂා කර ඔබව ෆ්‍රෙෂ් කරයි. විස බීජ ඔෆ් ෆ්‍රෙෂ් එක ඔන්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and a warm welcome, bringing to you news from across Sri Lanka and around the world tonight on First at 9, AdaDerana 24. I'm Indiva Riyamwantha. The number of affected people owing to the prevailing adverse weather conditions has almost doubled within the last 24 hours, with the latest number being 92,593, belonging to some 23,000 families across 6 districts. With that being the case, leave of officials of all grades at the Department of Meteorology, Disaster Management Centre and the National Building Research Organisation are cancelled. But authorities say that the situation could improve after tomorrow.
The inclement weather conditions prevailing in the island has affected Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara, Galle, Matara, Hambantota, Kandy and Kegel districts, with several areas in Galle and Matara districts in particular still inundated due to heavy rains. Katunayaka yet again received the highest rainfall, with 272.3 millimetres being recorded over the past 24 hours. A minor flood situation was caused in the area of Millakande along the river Kalu, with the water level of the river hitting 7.66 metres. Heavy rains also caused the river Ging to slightly flood in the area of Baddegama, since the water level was at 4.97 metres. In the meantime, river Nilvala has broken its banks in the area of Panadugama, with water level touching 6.59 metres. A number of houses and roads in low-lying areas in the district of Galle are still inundated due to floods. Motor traffic along the Mapalagama-Galle main road, meanwhile, is limited to Nagoda due to floods. In the meantime, several buildings of the Sri Sumanarama temple in Galle sustained damages due to landslides in the area, and a house was damaged in Akurasa due to mudslides. The inclement weather situation damaged a house adjacent to the Mithiagoda Veragoda Vijayaba Vidyalaya, causing injuries to a mother and her daughter. A car, which veered off the southern expressway, meanwhile, collided with the guardrail near the area of Pinadua of Baddegama. In the meantime, the Department of Irrigation warns that water levels of rivers Kalu, Ging and Nilvala, as well as the stream Attanagalu, are continuously on the rise. Furthermore, the governor of the southern province, Hemal Gunasekara, said that all government schools in Galle and Mathura districts will be kept closed as a result of the prevailing inclement weather that has affected many areas in the two districts. Accordingly, the schools will remain closed for the next 2 days, with them being closed yesterday as well as today. There is more concern for the districts of Kalutara and Galle as landslide warnings are issued for several areas in the two districts.
Level 2 warning have been issued to Yatiantara Divisional Secretariat Division of Galle District and Athuradiya and Pitabadra Divisional Secretariat Divisions of Mathura District. A level 3 red warning has been issued to Bulat Sinhala, Walalawita, Matugama and Nagalavatta Divisional Secretariat Divisions of Kalutara District. Alpitiya, Niyagama, Nagoda, Imaduwa and Baddegama Divisional Secretariat Divisions of Galle District. Many slope and cutting failures have been reported from these districts and one death has been reported so far. Therefore, we advise people living in landslide prone areas to be extra vigilant about unstable cuts in vicinity to their houses and stay away from them as much as possible.
In the meantime, the Department of Meteorology said that the intensity of the weather condition in the southwestern area of the country could turn better from tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre places the number of displaced people in the affected areas at over 50,000.
More than 80,000 people been affected in the 5 districts around the country. The house damages are assessed by the officials and will be paid accordingly. The number of displaced persons recorded than 15,000. Those numbers are rapidly increasing as the evacuations are taken place in many areas of Galle and Mathura district. 117 call center number is completely open for all the communication and service coordination. Funds already been released by the Minister of Disaster Management to the district secretary officials, especially the stakeholders including military and the police being deployed.
කිසකෙස් යනවාද විසඳුම දින 6න් පුරාණයේ පටන් භාවිතා කරන ඉපැරණි ශාකසාර වට්ටු රූපට අනුව නිපදවන ගණේෂා hair growth oil සියලුම ෆාමසි සහ වෙළඳ සැල් වලින්.
The weeks-long tug-of-war between leader of the United National Party, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, and his party Deputy Minister Sajith Premadasa looks to be nearing an end. During a meeting held at the Temple Trees last evening, it has been agreed to appoint Minister Sajith Premadasa as the man to represent the party in the looming race for President's office. But it is reported that the office or the offer at presidential candidacy came with a set of conditions, which Sajith Premadasa denies.
A special meeting was held between senior members of the United National Party at Temple Trees last evening. Chaired by party leader Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, the meeting was attended by Ministers Ravi Karunanayaka, Lakshman Kiriyalla, Navin Disanayaka, Akila Viraj Karyavasam, Kabir Hashim, Malik Samaravikrama and Ranjit Madhumu Bandara. All members at the meeting had unanimously agreed to the proposal made by the Premier to appoint Deputy Leader of the party, Minister Sajith Premadasa, as the presidential candidate. Political sources say that a decision has been made to abolish the executive presidency within the first 6 months after Minister Premadasa is elected the head of state. Discussions had also focused on reaching an agreement about a devolution of power in an attempt to ensure support of the Tamil National Alliance. It has also been proposed that leadership of the party must remain with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and that he must be given the candidacy of premiership during the next general election. The proposal to name Minister Premadasa as the presidential candidate will be put to the working committee of the UNP tomorrow for its approval. The proposal will then need to receive the approval of the party leaders of the United National Front as well. Meanwhile, a meeting was held between Minister Sajith Premadasa and minority party leaders representing the UNF at the Ministry of Finance today. Minister Premadasa later held a meeting with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe with the attendance of Ministers Malik Samaravikrama and Kabir Hashim.
එක්සත් ජාතික පෙරමුණ ඔබතුමා සම්මත කරගත්තා කියලා වාර්තා වෙනවා. ඒක සත්‍යතාවය කොහොමද?
මට කවුරුත් තාම
Nobody officially confirmed anything with me. Newspapers today reported that I was pressurized by conditions while the agreement was made to appoint me as the presidential candidate. I am not a person who would be pressurized by anything.
කිසිම දෙයකට යටත් වෙන මිනිසෙක් නෙමෙයි.
In the meantime, issuing a special statement in response to Minister Premadasa's request yesterday to join hands with him, former General Secretary of the party Thisatta Nayaka informed his decision to comply with it. Meanwhile, today, the 4th rally, organised in support of Minister Premadasa, was held at the public grounds in Mathugama. However, Minister Dr. RAJAPAKSA and Deputy Minister Palitha Tevarapperuma, who represent the Kalutara district, did not attend the rally. For the first time in the democratic history of Sri Lanka, I will be the only presidential candidate who will come forward to revive the country without being pressurized or influenced by any conditions. I will not provide relief to war heroes by looking at circulars or regulations. My goal is to provide them relief without limits.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa questions whether it is a good idea to give power to a duo who are at loggerhead over even the chance to contest in the election. Referring to the latest situation at the United National Party, the opposition leader impressed that it is time to contemplate the consequences of such a move. Meanwhile, presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, today pledged to resolve all issues of disabled war veterans within days of taking office as president.
The National Convention of Sub-Organisations of Families Engaged in Foreign Employment was worked off this morning under the patronage of opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa and the presidential hopeful of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Our primary duty in a future government is to revive the collapsed economy, and we have a plan for that. During the tenure of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, there was significant development, and now you have the opportunity to ensure that development continues from where it stopped. We have chosen our candidate, and they still haven't managed it. When one says it was done last night, another says that it was not the case. There are two constitutional centres of power of the President and the Prime Minister, but they are in a tug of war. Can a country function like that? If they are fighting to enter the race to become the President or Prime Minister, what will happen if they come to power? It will be worse. It will be the people who suffer. Sajith Ranil feud is nothing new to the people. The time has come to think whether a country can move forward with the two persons who fight for the chance to contest actually being in power. Later, the National Convention of Sub-Organisations of War Veteran Families was held with the patronage of the duo. A minute's silence was also observed in memory of the fallen war veterans. There were a great number of anomalies when I took over, and the only thing left for me to do was to grant the lifetime pension payment. I pledge to look after all of you, considering you as war heroes. I will never let a single thing happen to war heroes under a government of mine, and I consider it an obligation and a responsibility.
අපි යුද බිමට අරන් ගිය කොල්ලෝ පාරේ ඉන්නකොට අතපය නැති කොල්ලෝ අතපය ගලවගෙන ඉන්නකොට.
When I was about to visit our disabled war heroes on the streets, I called Gotabaya Rajapaksa and asked him what he can do for them. He told me to tell them that within days of becoming president, he would resolve their issue and ask them to be patient for 2 months.
ඒ ළමයින්ට එහෙම කියන්න කියලා ඒ ළමයින්ට ගෙවල් වලට ගිහිල්ලා ඉන්න කියන්න මාස දෙකක් ඉවසන්න කියන්න. ඒක තමයි එතුමා දීපු පණිවිඩය.
UPFA parliamentarian Susil Premajayantha is of the view that the conditional candidacy for Minister Sajith Premadasa in the upcoming presidential election changes nothing in the country's governance over the next 5 years if the UNP comes to power. Addressing a media briefing today, he also highlighted that the people have forgotten about the true issues in the country owing to the headline-grabbing UNP power struggle.
Our position is with conditional candidatureship for Sajith Premadasa, and there won't be any change in the governance within next 5 years. But fortunately, Gotabaya Rajapaksa will win with vast majority, so there won't be such a situation. Because of their fight within the party, the people, so they forget about what happened in Easter Sunday. That is another issue. Disaster management in the country, entirely depend on the public service. Now, public service today is crippling. So, no solutions given by the ministries or the ministers, the relevant ministers. There was an attempt to appoint 7,500 project assistants attached to respective divisional secretary office. But Election Commission intervened and stopped those interviews. It shows without calling interview, without publishing the vacancies without adequate funds to pay salaries. What they have done? They have backdated all the letters to 16th and issue letters. So this time also, this government and the UNP, they try to cheat the people, especially the youth in our country. Issue of the telephone conversation of former Director General of the Bribery Commission and the present Solicitor General. The issue is, who is that politician influenced her to frame charges against Gotabaya Rajapaksa and 7 others? There can be some attempts to file or frame new charges.
The disabled war veterans who staged a protest in front of the Colombo Fort railway station are going ahead with their protest for the 15th consecutive day today. The Cabinet yesterday granted approval to provide all the members of the armed forces, police and special task force who have been disabled due to the war a pension equal to their last salary they drew prior to retirement. The protesting war veterans, however, rejected the Cabinet decision and continued with their protest, with 2 disabled veterans commencing a fast unto death, demanding that necessary provisions be made for their wives or a relative of the family to receive the pension even after their passing. 2 more veterans also joined the campaign later. With that being the case, the President's media division, however, stated that although the President proposed to grant the salary to the spouse or children below 26 years of age following the death of a military officer, the Cabinet of Ministers had approved the proposal submitted by the Minister of Finance to grant the lifelong salary only to the officer. Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira said that according to the Cabinet paper which was given the green light, war veterans will get 70,792 rupees and 30 cents during the entirety of their lives, and that there are no provisions to ensure the continuation of that payment to either their spouse or children following their death. Meanwhile, YOSHITHA Rajapaksa, son of opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, has been reinstated as Lieutenant of the Sri Lanka Navy. The Navy spokesperson said that the Navy commander signed the order issued by the President to reinstate YOSHITHA Rajapaksa with effect from the 28th of February 2016. Sri Lanka Navy suspended Lieutenant YOSHITHA from the exercise of naval service on the 28th of February in 2016 as directed by the Ministry of Defence. The Financial Crimes Investigation Division had requested the Defence Ministry to suspend Rajapaksa in order to keep its investigations on the financial irregularities at the Carlton Sports Network independent. Rajapaksa was arrested on the 30th of January the same year by the FCID and later released on bail on the 16th of June. The 12 fundamental rights petitions filed against former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando, Inspector General of Police Pooja Jayasundara, the Cabinet members and several other parties for allegedly failing to prevent the Easter Sunday attacks was taken up before a 7-member Supreme Court judge bench. Attorney General Dappula de Oliveira told the court that the IGP was previously ordered to submit a revised affidavit with limited objections instead of the one submitted on the 17th of July. The AG alleged that the revised affidavit submitted by the IGP also makes baseless, absurd allegations against him, that the officers of this department, and requested the bench to reject the IGP's revised affidavit as it is against the court order that asked him to present only limited objections. After much deliberation, the Supreme Court ruled that the IGP's affidavit submitted on the 23rd of September will only be relied upon, while the previous affidavits would be disallowed. And with that, we take a short break. Do stay with us for your business news. Welcome back, taking you to business news. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe highlights the responsibility which lies with the government to ensure deregulation of policies and making financial help available for both state and private sector companies, which the Premier says will be affected in the next few years owing to the downfall of the global economic trends. Addressing the Most Admired Companies of Sri Lanka 2019 awards ceremony, the Premier also noted that the private sector has a major role to play in the coming years.
The Most Admired Companies of Sri Lanka 2019 award ceremony was held at the BMICH and attended by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe as the chief guest, along with High Commissioner of India Taranjit Singh Sandhu. Organised by the International Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka, together with the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants for the second consecutive year, the ceremony saw 10 local companies: John Keells Holdings, Bank of Ceylon, CBL Investments, Commercial Bank of Ceylon, Sampath Bank, LOLC Holdings, Selinco Life Insurance, Dilmah Ceylon Tea Company, Hat National Bank and Aitken Spence being felicitated.
First and foremost, this is the period for making promises. And I know you all are enamored by many promises and many ways. But frankly, next 2-3 years are going to be tough. It's not because of what we are doing in the government, because the global economy. What is on the plus side? You see the economic power of the world shifting to Asia and the growth also in the South Asia. But on the other hand, this is the weakest rate of growth we've had after the global financial crisis. And we have to survive in those circumstances. And how can you do it? We have to integrate ourselves more within South Asia and within Asia itself. This is where the growing markets are. We have to help the companies. How do we do it? It's not through various regulations, but deregulations, and certainly make assistance available, especially financial assistance for the companies for trade adjustment, for trade promotion, for tourism promotion. A large amount of money has to be made available by the government of Sri Lanka in the next 2-3 years. It's not going to be easy, but it can be done. We have to now recognize that the private sector, big and small, have a role to play, and now we are working on how we strengthen this.
In our headline-making news, Sri Lanka has missed fiscal targets as part of the extended fund facility arrangement with the International Monetary Fund due to front-loading of spending from the clearing of arrears and externally financed capital projects carried over from 2018, as well as a sharp fall in indirect revenues following the terrorist attacks. A staff team from the IMF led by Manuel Goretti, who undertook the 6th review under Sri Lanka's economic reform program, supported by the $1.5 billion 4-year deal, said the program targets agreed by the Sri Lankan side at the time of the 5th review are no longer within reach. But IMF said authorities are committed to achieve a primary fiscal surplus of 0.2% of GDP in 2019 through implementation of remaining revenue measures in the 2019 budget and prudent expenditure management. Sri Lanka is entitled to receive the balance amount of $345 million from the IMF following the 6th review, but the mission said sustained efforts are needed to mobilize revenues by broadening the tax base, and the central bank should continue to allow for exchange rate flexibility and limit forex intervention. During the 2 weeks of its review, the International Monetary Fund staff team had reached an understanding with Sri Lankan authorities to complete all pending actions and structural benchmarks for the review over the next few weeks. The IMF staff team, meanwhile, welcomed the authorities' efforts to normalize the security situation in the country after the tragic terrorist attacks in April and mitigate the impact of the shock on the economy. However, the agency revised real GDP growth to 2.7% for 2019, but Sri Lanka's growth is projected to improve to 3.5% in 2020 as tourist arrivals and related activities gradually recover. In its end-of-mission statement, the IMF went on to say that sustaining prudent policies and implementing institutional reforms remain critical to preserve macroeconomic stability in Sri Lanka, given the country's sizable public debt, but welcomed ongoing plans to bolster competitiveness and medium-term growth by gradually liberalizing the trade and investment regimes. And at the Colombo Stock Exchange, Sri Lankan shares closed higher as bank and diversified shares gained after the central bank asked licensed lenders to cut interest rates. Yesterday, the central bank said its monetary board decided to order licensed commercial banks to reduce interest rates on all loans and advances by at least 200 basis points by October 15th in comparison to the interest rates applicable as of 30th of April 2019, subject to certain exclusions. As a result, analysts say the benchmark ASPI ended 0.33% up at 5,762.40. Here's a brief look at your market performance today.
The secondary market yield curve on the bond side remained broadly unchanged, with the overall market witnessing moderate volumes. Meanwhile, at the bill auction held today, the yields of 3 months increased by 1 basis points to 7.62%, while the 6 months and 1 year remained at 7.75% and 8.41%. In the equity market, the bourse ended in green, mainly contributed by distilleries, rebounding from the negative sentiment witnessed over the last 3 days. Turnover levels recorded a 9-week low today.
Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan rupee weakened after the International Monetary Fund lowered the country's growth forecast for 2019. The rupee closed at 181.55 to 181.70 against the US dollar, 0.28% weaker compared to yesterday's close of 181.5 to 181.25. Here's a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies of the world today. We have your top stories from across the world and your sports news coming up after this short break. In your international news, the U.S. House of Representatives will launch a formal impeachment inquiry into U.S. President Donald Trump over reports he sought foreign help to smear a political rival, setting up a dramatic clash between Congress and the White House that could split into the 2020 presidential campaign. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's change of heart followed reports that Trump had pressured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a phone call on the 25th of July to investigate Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden and his son.
The actions taken to date by the president have seriously violated the Constitution, especially when the president says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. This week, the president has admitted to asking the president of Ukraine to take actions which would benefit him politically. Therefore, today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. I'm directing our 6 committees to proceed with their investigations under that umbrella of impeachment inquiry. The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law. The intelligence community inspector general formally notified the Congress that the administration was forbidding him from turning over a whistleblower complaint on Constitution Day. This is a violation of law. Shortly thereafter, press reports began to break of a phone call by the President of the United States calling upon a foreign power to intervene in his election. This is a breach of his constitutional responsibilities.
Taking you very quickly to sports in rugby, Uruguay just about managed to edge out a spirited Fiji to win the 10th match of the Rugby World Cup being worked off in Japan. They kept the Islanders at bay with a scoreline of 30-27. In doing so, Uruguay scored 3 tries, leaving Fiji staring at an exit from the competition. That's all from us here tonight. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.